What's up? What's happening? The Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/at the Team 980. Off we go here on a Tuesday. Right, Anthony? It's Tuesday.
It's the day after Monday.
Sometimes I can't remember.
Tuesday.
Today, I will say this week has been a week where we're doing a lot of planning ahead because obviously the Burgundy and Sold, I should say, party is coming up on Thursday. So we're doing a lot of planning ahead for that. We've had a couple of other things come up where we got guests that are booked out later in the week, and so that's good. That's a good job by us, Anthony, producing this radio show. But it does make it hard to remember where we are in the current time and space, which is most important. Between 4 and 7, and here we are needing to remember where we are. We're actually going to start a bit similar, I would say, to where we started yesterday, which is the running back market in the NFL. And this is a very fraught topic because I think everyone has a point, and there is an unfortunate reality that must be addressed here that is uncomfortable to say and unfortunate in its truth. And that is that the NFL cares mostly about one thing, winning. And that running backs don't help you win according to the data. It's data that I will admit I don't really understand because, and not that I don't understand it in terms of like intellectually, it shouldn't be this way. And I've said this for years when talking about running backs. Running backs touch the ball more than anyone else not named quarterback. And quarterbacks obviously make a lot more decisions. That is why ultimately the quarterback position grades out as the most important one. It's why they get the most money, they get the most credit, they get the most blame. Because not only are we evaluating their execution on a weekly basis, but we're evaluating their decision making and where they put the football, who they get it to. We're evaluating the do they throw picks? Do they not? Based off of not just did they throw the ball too high behind whatever, but like why did they throw to that guy? Why did they miss that guy wide open for the touchdown? All that stuff is on display. Running backs make a ton of decisions in games too, but they're not as consequential. If a running back misses his tracks or has a wrong block, typically, the wrong block thing could result in a bigger deal, but if he misses his track and forgets the play and goes a slightly wrong angle, it's not the end of the world. Sometimes you won't even know. Most of the time you won't even know as a casual fan. Just he's going, no gain. And it's like, well, it's because the running back didn't do his job, but it looked like the offensive lineman missed the block, and we always blame the O-line, right? But when you touch the ball 30 times a game or 20 times a game even, it seems like that's a pretty important guy. But what's it worth to wins? And the data suggests, which is why every NFL team has come to the conclusion that it's not much, and thus the NFL front offices and executives who care about winning and would rather spend resources in other places on the roster don't think that the running back position impacts winning very much. Not that you shouldn't have one on your roster. It's just the caliber is less important than other positions. A guy who averages 3.8 a carry versus 4.2 a carry doesn't actually translate to fewer wins, at least not in any statistically significant way, to the point that you'd pay the 4.2 guy $9 million and the 3.8 guy $2 million, and that $7 million difference isn't worth it. It's like, okay, well, yeah, the other guy's better, but like he's not $7 million better. But that $7 million upgrade we can have at safety is, let's go spend it on the safety. And realistically, you're dealing with two other problems. One, because there is an abundance of running backs who can kind of hit that 4.0 per carry average. And again, this is part of the reason that is to take an even further step back is because passing is more important than running in the NFL. The average pass play, Danny Heifetz in The Ringer wrote a good article about this today. the average pass play is about 7 yards per. The average run play is about 4 yards per. Which would you rather do? The 7. We all, I think, at least smart football people, I think, have an understanding of how the two interplay and why one can help the other. You can't just do the passing one all the time. Otherwise, that average would come down significantly. And your chances at explosive plays would drop significantly. But by and large, you're trying for the 7 yard. So you're already talking about the guy who has the ball on the less significant plays. Then the difference in caliber, not worth the price difference. And there's too many guys that can do somewhere in the middle, a 4.0 yards per carry guy on a league minimum contract. And if you can have 2 or 3 of those guys, or one prime Ezekiel Elliott, prime Saquon Barkley, and get, let's say 2 guys on the cheap that create 90% of the elite production, why would you not do that? Now you have multiples, so you have insurance, as opposed to like, oh, we paid Saquon a bunch of money, he goes down, now we're screwed. You got 2 guys, and you're getting most of it, and you can spend money somewhere else. And so there's just this reality that goes with what I said yesterday. If you missed it, the basic premise being the best years of a running back's career are early. That happens on the rookie contract. And if you were to say, I can get 7 years of production on 5 years of a rookie deal and 2 franchise tags, you'd probably be happy, and then you let that guy go and start the process over again. All that point I made yesterday meshes with the points I just made into a really bad reality for NFL running backs. But I also get why they're ticked. Like, Saquon Barkley is one of the best players in football. Full stop, period. He's incredible. Josh Jacobs is remarkable. He's one of the best players in the league with the ball in his hands, which, by the way, is really important. The guy with the ball in his hands. And so how these things mesh, the data is there, but on some intellectual level, it just doesn't connect and it doesn't make sense, and I get why running backs are pissed. So the question I would have is this: what can we do about it? It's a question we're going to explore in a couple different facets today. Jai Halsell, former NFL agent, is going to join us at 5:30 to discuss the closest position that we have to this in the NFL outside of running back that this is happening to is linebacker. Zaire Franklin of the Colts is going to join us coming up at 4:30 to discuss what it's like playing a quote-unquote de-emphasized position in the modern NFL. And as he gets near the end of his rookie contract, how's he thinking about what's next for him, especially Z, a later round pick who didn't even make the first round money. So I want to explore this from a couple angles. I'm also open to ideas that you may have. 301-230-0980. I've seen some interesting ideas floating around the internet today. We'll share some of those. 301-230-0980. What do we do about this running back problem? These guys deserve to get their due, but how do we define what their due is? 301-230-0980. We'll discuss next on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 on YouTube and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always alive as well on the free Odyssey app. Anthony, I did an amateur thing. I took one too many bites of my food. I was like, oh, we're back, and I am still chewing. Where's my water? Not close. Awesome. Great job, Greg. You've been a professional radio person for 10 years now.
Was it a finable offense?
No, it wasn't that bad.
I'm just checking, you know.
No.
Got to get that quota.
I perhaps might find myself for forgetting the whiteboard, though. I laid it on my backpack. Although, I'm not going to put it, like, on my wife. It's not her fault. But, like, we rearranged a couple things as we were cleaning up the house this morning. And I think that got moved. So I set myself up for success. But my setup for success was making the house messier. And thus, I failed. It's on me. It's 100% on me.
So did Siri not remind you before you were walking out the door?
No, because Siri reminded me this morning to put the whiteboard with my bag.
Okay.
But did not remind me, like once I separated like a moron, the whiteboard and my bag again. Actually, I don't even know if I did. I think the whiteboard was probably sitting right next to my bag. I picked my bag up to put my computer in it, and then I forgot it. I forgot the whiteboard. Unbelievable. Oh, you know what? That's a fine. That's a $5 fine.
You know what we call that right there, Craig?
Accountability?
Accountability, baby.
Yeah. Yeah. The whiteboard, by the way, is to keep track of the fines if you're not familiar with what we're talking about. All right, so there's that. Zaire Franklin joins us in 12 minutes. Yeah. Damn. How do I make sure that I bring it tomorrow?
You rely on me to remind you.
Okay.
To bring the whiteboard.
Okay. So if I forget tomorrow and you don't remind me successfully, is that a fine for you?
That would be a fine.
Okay.
But I'm going to remind you when you get home.
But the problem is that I don't drive, so it's not like I can put it in my car.
But what about your bag?
It's too big for the bag.
I'll put it at the door.
That's what I'm going to have to do.
Yep.
I'm going to have to put it at the door. Okay. That's our plan. Craig remembers stuff. Take 3. Ready, break. Have you seen any solutions to this running back thing that you like? Because like there is an inherent value problem, right? Like everyone loves the idea of a free market until it screws them over. Until it's like, wait, that's not fair. I saw this crazy stat today, by the way. CEO salaries since like 1978 up like 1,400%. The average worker salary is up 18. Yeah.
Good gracious.
Perhaps we could use a little market regulation for, those of us that aren't chief executive officers. Somehow they did run businesses back in the day and they were still successful and people got paid. Different show, different argument. But like you see that stat and you're like, hey, someone should do something. It's like, yeah, market regulation. Because otherwise the powerful people at the top of the market, who in some ways are setting the market, are going to take the things for themselves. They're not really going to care about everyone else. That's the nature of capitalism. It's a dog-eat-dog world, which is why I personally, in all facets of my life, believe in well-regulated capitalism. Capitalism is good because it creates competition. It needs to be regulated so that once someone gets an advantage in the competition, they don't take advantage of that to multiply said advantage until everyone else is irrelevant. It's my own personal philosophy, economic philosophy, if you will. And so when I look at NFL running back, there is a part of this that I just go, yeah, it sucks. You play running back, and that's the market. You don't really help win football games. That's what matters. The ultimate end goal is to win football games. But it happens to great expense to these guys' bodies. It's a brutal position. And they are underpaid for the early parts of their career when they are at their best and on a regulated, league-mandated rookie contract as opposed to being in an open free market. The problem is they hit that open free market 5 to 7 years into their career when they are seen as damaged goods. And so I think that needs to be fixed. There needs to be some kind of different regulation to modify or tweak that and allow for the Ezekiel Elliott's that come out of Ohio State and are the best back in the league almost immediately to be rewarded for that sooner.
Yeah, but I feel like now you're, in a sense, moving the goalpost forward, just this specific group. I mean, you could also probably bring in the linebackers, even though I think they have a longer shelf life. But I just feel like that would be problematic around the league because now this running back group is being favored when they're all out there, risking their life, playing, hard each and every game and day. And you're telling me that this group gets 2 years to, be able to sign a max contract as opposed to going through the rookie contract just like everybody else.
So here would be my solution that takes that into account. I kind of just thought of this, but I probably also saw it somewhere, and there's different versions of these things that happen in all sports, right? Let's say you come out as a rookie and you crush it at any position, and you are a first-team All-Pro or a Pro Bowler or whatever.
Sauce Gardner.
Right. So you're Sauce Gardner. Is Sauce Gardner underpaid the next 4 years on his rookie deal?
Yeah.
Hell yeah, he is. So let's fix it. Right? If the goal is to win and also reward, and the secondary goal here now becomes reward players who are producing. You make an All-Pro, a year comes off your rookie deal. Or you're eligible for an extension sooner. I think you have to take a year off of the deal, which teams will never go for. Owners will never go for it. But because if you make them eligible for an extension sooner, then you make them eligible for an extension sooner, the team's just not going to engage them on that. And then you're talking about a holdout and potentially passing up money, and that you're kind of in a different version of the situation you are right now, except for it's happening earlier in a player's career with less money for them to come back to. So I guess in that way, the leverage is different. It's like, are you going to sit out if you're Saquon Barkley this year over $10 million? Like when you could be making $10 million? No. Are you going to sit out if you're only making $800,000? Maybe. It's still a lot of money to most folks, but in NFL money, that's not very much, right? Especially when if the team is like, okay, we give in, you could be getting $8, $9, $10 million. Or is there, if you're going to regulate these league mandated rookie contracts, can you make the money automatic? Hey, if you go out and you produce and you make first team All-Pro, your contract doubles in value, triples in value. Like it would have to depend on the player, the position, and the slot money. And I haven't done enough looking at the math to know what makes sense or doesn't. But I feel like there's got to be a way, and I think your point is a good one, that it shouldn't just be for running backs that make this exception. But if you truly get a game-changing player who deserves to be rewarded sooner, that player should get the reward. Now, it does make team building hard.
Yep.
And that's the other part of this, right? In a salary cap league, if all of a sudden you're relying on these young players who are on cheaper contracts and you make decisions accordingly, and then that player is more expensive, that could mess up your plan. But actually, like that, for me personally, that's a side effect I don't mind. I think if your business plan is take advantage of cheap labor, your business plan sucks. I am pro labor. Pay the people who are good. If your plan is to take advantage of cheap labor, that's a bad plan. And so I actually think that veterans would sign up for that, because it would reintroduce the value of having more veterans in the locker room. If that young rookie is going to be good and cost you more money anyway, you might as well keep the veteran. And that's something that the NFL has had a problem with, where it's become a younger and younger league because teams just keep chasing lottery tickets, and there's been a whole litany of trickle-down issues because of the lack of experience in the league as a whole.
I was about to say, Craig, I feel as though if you take away the team building aspect of, you know, of a franchise, it's gonna be tough when you have to, you know, pay a player that is definitely deservedly of his contract, but then you have like a quarterback, or you have like, you know, a Myles Garrett who's also, you know, coming up on contract. It makes balancing all of that just that much tougher. So
that's the job.
I hear you, but
yeah, that's the job. The GMs would have to figure it out. The market would take a couple years to figure it out. But I also think like quarterbacks are overpaid. Like I know quarterback is hard and it's the most important position in the sport, but like they ain't worth that much more than everyone else. And I think, by the way, we're gonna start to see some quarterbacks who don't get paid. Because I think the more look, San Francisco's super unique because Kyle's super unique, and like I think Brock Purdy is better than people realize because of where he was drafted. But like if Brock Purdy goes and crushes it, and Sam Howell goes out and has a good year, like if people start to feel like they can get quarterback on the cheap, or that they have to because you can't win if you sign these guys to these insane contracts. Aaron Rodgers, like what? He's great, but like, can you really build a team around what the Jets are paying him? Like these are the kinds of things that I think are going to start to market correct. It's going to take a team with big stones to not sign their guy, but if it works out, other teams will follow suit. So the markets tend to correct themselves. Sometimes they need a little bit of a push, but I do think if there's a way to get more money into contracts earlier based off of performance, that actually would be good for the league in ways that I probably don't even fully understand because I just stumbled into an extra one when we were talking about it here amongst ourselves. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Colts linebacker and friend of the show, Zaire Franklin, Syracuse University's own, joins us next here on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Ben Standig joins us at the top of the hour, but right now it is our pleasure to welcome back to the show from Syracuse University and the Indianapolis Colts, Anthony's best friend, Colts linebacker, Zaire Franklin. Z, what's up, man?
Craig, how you doing? Big Ant, how you doing? How's everybody doing today?
Doing well, man. Doing well. Now, we'll get to the hard-hitting questions in a moment, but first, all off season, I figured at some point you'd be in town and come and hang out with us. What happened? Did Ant not invite you? What happened there?
Well, first off, I definitely haven't received a personal invite to D.C. from Anthony in a long time, so let me just put that on air, on record. Mm-hmm. But, man, I owe D.C. a trip, man. I miss D.C. D.C. is actually one of my favorite cities, to be honest with you. I love Chocolate City, man.
Well, since Anthony would invite you, consider this a personal invitation from me, since, your boy couldn't take care of it. I'll talk to him after the segment. Good gracious, Anthony, what is wrong with you?
I've detected a lie on this show from Brother Franklin.
Oh man. All right. Well, we'll get that straightened out. I always find this time of year interesting, Z. Obviously training camp around the corner for you and all your comrades in the NFL. How you feeling this time of year? Because I remember covering Washington when I was on the beat and talking to Trent Williams at the first day of training camp. And I was like, how you doing, man? He's like, it's the best I'll feel all year. So how's the body feeling? How are you feeling before you get going here and start running into people next week?
No, I'm definitely feeling good. I definitely, echo what Big Trent said. I mean, at this point, you really just polishing off. It just, this is the best you're going to feel all year. If you come in at 99%, it's only downhill from there. But, I'm just at that point, in the season, I'm in off season where I'm just I'm tired of training. I'm tired of running at a cone and backpedaling and, I'm tired of watching film. I'm ready just to go play ball. So, I got that, I just got that itch to just get back with the guys. Obviously just looking forward to another great year. It's 0-0, man. I know the Commanders, I got one off on this last year, but, it's okay, man. It's a new year, man. It's a new season. Anthony will let me let that one live. Let me live that one down last year, either too. So.
Yeah, he's subtle, that Anthony Haney. You guys had such a crazy year last year. What's it been like to be there in the spring with Coach Steichen and feeling like you guys have that new direction up in Indy?
Oh, man, it's been great. Obviously, just that, breath of fresh air. And honestly, after such a crazy year where, whether we're in the headlines for, coaching changes or, epic comebacks, all kind of nonsense. It was cool to kind of have a quiet off season, have a time where we all just kind of focus on just getting better, focus on, just continue to build. Obviously, Coach Steichen coming in just with a different energy, different mindset. So, looking forward to going to war for him, I think it's going to be a good year.
And then obviously in the draft headlines of what I would assume you would consider a good kind, you draft Anthony Richardson, who's just a one-of-one type of athlete. What did you see from him in the spring, and how excited are you to watch what he grows into?
Honestly, just the talent just popping off, the field pop off the tape, just the arm strength, honestly, even as a young guy, just, how comfortable he is, just kind of sitting back now, no pass rush, no pads on anything, but just to kind of see his progression and just kind of see him continue to grow and develop too was something cool to see. Fun young kid, man, just in there, just, having fun, just playing ball. I just definitely think that just bodes well for the team and just in the locker room. And then, obviously he's a, dynamic athlete, what he brings to the field in that regard, is just kind of is what it is. So just really looking forward to, seeing what him and JT will look like, on Sundays.
Colts linebacker Zaire Franklin's with us here on the Hoffman Show. I'd imagine there was a moment last year in the spring with Matt Ryan there and just his extreme level of intellect where you go, whoa, this is different. Or he does something. You're like, how did he know that? How did he see that? With Anthony, as in Anthony Richardson, not Anthony Haney, is there a story from the spring where his athleticism, his arm strength, he makes a throw and your head just snaps and you're like, wait, he just did what now?
Man, I would just say it was just when you plan with against a 15-year vet, whether it's Matt Ryan or Phillip Rivers, their just knowledge of the game is so much that they've seen. It's not too much that you're gonna show them that they haven't, actually seen, faced before, lost or beat, at some point in their careers. But I think with just young Anthony, man, it's just the new level of quarterbacks. He just brings that different element to the game with what he's capable of doing with his legs. There was multiple times where, as a defense, we're going in our second year in the scheme, second year in the system, and obviously Shane's got a great scheme. So we're playing a play, and it was just, one moment for sure where I'm playing a play, and I'm thinking it's about to be one thing, and next thing I know, Anthony's got the ball, he's running, and I'm like, man, if we have pads on, he's going to hit his head on the goalpost. Like, ain't nobody over there. Like, you know what I mean? It was just – and at that moment, it kind of just made me realize, I'm like, man, well, when you playing somebody that's dynamic like Anthony Richardson, or, even a lot of these other running quarterbacks, Jalen Hurts or, Justin Fields, you just always have to be aware and always have to be on your toes for that element of the quarterback run game. That's just something else to defend. Whereas, though, with the more traditional quarterbacks like we had last year, you just don't have that element to your offense. So I just think he's just a weapon in and of himself. I think it's just kind of cool to see. And as he continues to grow, mature, and settle in, I think he'll definitely be special.
So, Z, there was this series that The Athletic did called The Play Callers, where it was talking about all kinds of different offense stuff with Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay and all these guys. And in talking about that, we started talking about some of the RPO ingenuity over the last couple of years in the league. And the question I'm ultimately getting to is, like, how the hell you defend it? But I think it'd be cool for you to kind of explain to the audience what your thought process is on that. Because it's one thing when it's an RPO. Like, if you go into a practice when it's scripted and it's like, okay, I need to scrape, or I need to follow this guy, or I need to be alerted that this slant could be coming in behind me. Okay, that's fine if you know it's coming. But to remember all that when there's every other play in the playbook on the table, like, how can you take us, or how would you describe your decision-making process and kind of your thought process as the play starts, you realize first that it is an RPO, and then how you go about defending it?
Well, first of all, that's a great question. But what I would just say is, so, going into it, there's a lot of keys and a lot of tells pre-snap, based off of alignment, who's on the ball, who's at what spot, where's the running back aligned. And a lot of offenses have a lot of different tells just based off of that. So there's a lot of times before the ball's even snapped, I'm yelling to, whether it's, D. Leonard or Kenny Moore, I'm like, yo, RPO. Like, you stay on your toes, ready for this RPO. And I just think, for me, how I kind of approach RPOs is sometimes I think about it in a sense of, you can't necessarily play both plays, but sometimes I think about it, well, what would I rather the offense to do, for example. Right. So, like, every team runs RPO to some degree. So let's just say, like, if we're playing Baltimore, for example, right? Like, most of the time, I would rather Lamar hand the ball off. Like, I would rather not Lamar keep the ball. So for the most of the time, all the reads and everything that we're going to give him is going to, if he's really reading the play, he's going to hand the ball off for you. He's going to make this throw. You want to get the ball out of his hands. If we're playing JT, we're playing offense last year. For the most of the time, I'm always going to play JT. I'm going to make Matt keep the ball because, that's just more advantageous for us. You know what I mean? So right. A lot of times for me, it's just like, obviously, when you got great play callers like McVay and Shanahan, who are extremely creative, and do so well with, mixing and matching personnel and stuff like that. They're going to put you in situations where you're uncomfortable, or situations where you're not necessarily able to see it coming. But I would just say, for me, I think it's like really just kind of picking the lesser two evils. You're trying to dictate to the offense, what you want them to do. If I'm dictating to you now, they might get to the second half of, man, why isn't Lamar have as many carries as we, anticipate him have? Man, why isn't JT really getting the ball? Oh, well, it's because we're forcing you not to give JT the ball based off of the reads we're giving you. So in that sense, I'm basically making you run the plays that I want you to play instead of you running the plays that you want to play. So, I mean, and it's a constant chess game on the field, to be honest with you. But, I think just with that whole RPO stuff, it's just a lot of different, ways to play it.
That is such a good and thorough answer, and I appreciate it a lot because I think what people don't even necessarily understand is you're always going to be at a numbers disadvantage. That's the nature of RPO. But if you can pick the numbers disadvantage that gives you a better shot, you might as well pick that one, because there's no way, unless the offense makes a mistake, that you're going to be in an advantageous situation based off numbers, alignment, et cetera. That's the whole point of RPO.
Exactly.
Zaire Franklin with us, Colts linebacker here on the Hoffman Show. Of course, Z, the big kind of NFL hot topic of the day, of the week, is what's happening with the running back position. It's been so de-emphasized, and now we've seen the market kind of bottom out, where you have these incredible players like Saquon Barkley. Obviously, your guy, Jonathan Taylor's coming up this coming year in 2024, and probably looking at this going, this ain't good for me. But guys that are just getting franchise tagged after the rookie deal, no running back has signed a $10 million plus per year, multi-year deal since 2021. Like, what do you make of all this? And especially as a guy who plays a position that has also in some ways been de-emphasized and devalued across the league.
I would just say, first off, I'm obviously standing 100% 10 toes with, my NFL brothers in the running back position. I feel like running back is an extremely important position. First of all, and it's funny, I was just telling a couple of guys I was training, like, there's not many guys in the NFL that are capable of dealing with, what comes with being an every down back, taking these handoffs and, whether, that's first and second down, just trying to get the drive started, and also have the ability to still be explosive and, an X factor on third down in red zone situations, like a McCaffrey, like a Saquon, like a JT, like a Josh Jacobs. Like, these guys are, one of one. And first of all, I just feel like if you become the best at your position at NFL, in any position, you deserve to be the highest paid. We got kickers getting highest paid money, but they deserve that if you're the best in your position. Like, that's just how that goes. But, I just feel like, kind of more towards, like, a little bit about, like, how we talked about with the RPO. The NFL it runs in trends. And I feel like the thing that I've learned, and I've noticed, even before I was in the league, that, every time the NFL starts to lean towards one way, you'll have somebody pop out and go back to the old ways, and then they'll start dominating everybody, and then everybody runs back towards that. So, for example, like, before, maybe 2017 or something, everybody was passing the ball. They was trying to make DBs play linebacker, and, it was about how many DBs can you get on the field at a time. Well, then, Derrick Henry shows up. And now Derrick Henry is running for 200 yards, and he's throwing, linebackers from the numbers to the sideline. You know what I'm saying? And now you're like, okay, we need people to stop that. We need linebackers. And now, then obviously the premium on running backs goes up, and it's just like it's a back and forth. But only thing I would say is, as great as a player as, these quarterbacks are, from Patrick Mahomes to Josh Allen, they don't win these Super Bowls. They don't win these games without a running game. The running game is extremely important. So if you got somebody that's a dynamic factor in the backfield, it changes the game. It changes the whole dynamic. It changes the play calling. Just look at Christian McCaffrey. He was their offense. I know, Deebo Samuels is very talented, and Kittle and all those they got guys, but it was McCaffrey's show, and he took them that far with three different quarterbacks. It was his play that maintained that. And even when we were having our success, JT was the one that was catalyst in it. So, it could go on and on. They pay the guys, man. I'm always with the guys. Pay the guys what they deserve. And I hopefully, that situation resolves itself.
So we were talking about it over the first half hour of the show, and kind of an idea that we came up with that I'm sure others have talked about as well is trying to make it so that either if, like, say you make a first-team All-Pro like Ezekiel Elliott did when he was a young running back, or and this doesn't have to be for running back, it can be for any position. We make a Pro Bowl, whatever, that there's either an automatic money trigger in the contract or it takes a year off the back of it. I doubt owners would ever go for that. But are these the kinds of things that, like, with the NFLPA can start to look at and say, hey, all right, we can't just have, like, the business model for teams can't be exploit cheap labor. And especially, I think there's also a play there for veterans to say, like, yeah, stop just looking for rookies all the time on cheap contracts. Pay us later in our careers. Do you think that's something that amongst the PA, like, looking at the structure of contracts is going to be on the table in any time soon?
Well, I know that PA, has their own stance, and I know that they kind of, we just hired a new executive director, so I know this is one of the big things on his docket. But the only thing I would say about it is, man, like, it's running backs now. Maybe it's linebackers next. Maybe it's receivers next. Maybe it's safeties next. And it's just kind of like you mentioned, if the owners and teams are just going to pay, want the cheapest option and not want to pay people for extreme production at their position. I mean, it'd be different if we were just talking about guys that were just, hometown favorites or guys that just grew into a program. We're talking about literally the best players in the NFL. And these guys are not getting their due, and GMs are anonymously saying, "Oh, we'll just draft somebody and deal with that." And it's just like, if that's a mentality that's going to be had for a running back, what's stopping them from having that mentality towards other positions? So I think it's just extremely important for us as a union and as fellow players to just stand by our guys, and just understand that, okay, it could be them now. It could be them now, but who's to stop it from being somebody else later? So.
Definitely. Zaire Franklin with us from the Colts here on the Hoffman Show. Speaking of your position, it's just so hard to play your position right now in the NFL. And part of that is because we're kind of almost in the middle of a shift that you're talking about, where 2017, everyone's passing all the time. Last year in the NFL was the highest rushing average since I think the late 80s, if I'm remembering the stat correctly. So how different are offenses that you're preparing for, specifically at your position, week in, week out? And by the way, especially in your division with a guy like Derrick Henry on the schedule twice a year.
I definitely think it's just, as the game progresses, I think, offenses and play calls are just getting very creative with, how they decide to incorporate running games. Like we mentioned earlier, you got with the rise of, running quarterbacks, that kind of, shifts a lot of things now, because it's like, you got basically two threats back there now in almost every situation. But I would just say, obviously with Derrick Henry, he's a talented guy. Still got Etienne in Jacksonville and Damon Pierce in Houston. So, I mean, I feel like, I don't know, the way I look at it is it's just like, it's like the jungle. I feel like all three of them are just different type of animals, you know what I'm saying? And I'm Steve Irwin, so I'm just wrestling them all down. So, I mean, they definitely bring their own different, elements and stuff to the game. But, at the end of the day, that's what I get paid to do. So.
No doubt about it. Zaire Franklin with us here for another minute or two on the Hoffman Show. All right, Z, so you're a huge Philly guy, Philly sports fan. Joel Embiid this weekend made some comments that got people nervous. If I want to win a championship, that's all that matters, whether it's Philly or somewhere else. You nervous your boy's going to leave, that he's going to ask out?
Man, look, I'm gonna trust the process, man. I'm gonna trust Embiid. Look, I understand. Look, that last series hurt us, man. I feel like as a Sixers fan, we've had our fair share of heartbreak, from Kawhi to we were winning in the fourth quarter of a Game 6 at home. I mean, I'm still not necessarily over it, but it is what it is. So, I mean, it's out, and, Nick Nurse in there, hopefully he can turn it around, man. But I get Embiid, he wants to win. He want to win it at all costs. And, at some point, even the most loyal guys got to leave, Look at Dan Lillard, at some point, it's either, you're going to, sink with a ship, or you're going to go chase your own goal. So I feel that, but I doubt that it'll get to that point, man. Embiid is a mainstay. He's a staple in Philly, and I feel like it's something that he always wanted to be, was in Philly. So I'm hoping that it goes the right way.
Speaking of, would you trade Maxey for Lillard?
No.
Okay, we're on the same page there. It took me a while to come around to that.
Maxey is he's just a young budding star. Now, don't get me wrong, I would love to see Maxey make that next step this year. You know what I mean? And truly being a 25-a-night guy. I think he's capable of doing it. I think he learned a lot from James this past year. But it's just that future. And then, honestly, I mean, if you put Maxey, Anthony Simmons, and Scoot in the same back, I mean, that's – I don't know, man. The Portland know what they're doing. They would take that deal. But now if we get Maxey, Dame, and Embiid, now you're looking at something that's something serious. So, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it all works out.
Yeah, it's going to be a long, long NBA summer. The long NFL summer coming to a close. Colts
Finally
getting into training camp next week along with the rest of the league. Z, good luck this year. I see, by the way, on your preseason schedule, you get a home game. You get to go back to Philly for week 3 of the preseason.
Indeed. Got joint practice down there for sure. So, I get a little time, back in my city. Every time I bump into the Eagles in Philly, they be like, I'm like, bro, y'all in my city. Like, I'm home. Y'all just visiting. So I always got to let them know that. So I'm going home. They'll be visiting. So
Nice. I'm sure that'll go over great on the practice field in the middle of August when everyone's hot and tired of running into each other.
Yeah, don't care.
Z, always appreciate the time, man. Hopefully we'll catch up somewhere along the line during the season. Best of luck in camp and stay healthy, bro.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it, Craig.
All right, that's Zaire Franklin, everybody, with us here on the Hoffman Show. And always appreciate you using the fact that that's your boy from back in the day at Cuse and saying like, hey, you willing to come on the show? And Z was nice enough to do it once and apparently had a good enough time that he was willing to come back.
Yes, sir. He answered the call.
He did. Bringing some of the group chat to real life too.
Of course.
Got to. All right, when we get back here on the Hoffman Show, Ben Standing has been doing a lot of great work to put a bow on the Dan Snyder era. He did an all Dan Snyder era team of good NFL players, an all Dan Snyder era team of bad decisions. He also went deep on Josh Harris today in terms of the process and what he did when he took over in Philadelphia, speaking of. So we'll talk to Ben about all of that next here on the Team 980.
You can listen to the Team 980 on your smart.
It's the Hoffman Show, Hour 2. Get going here on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/@theteam980. All right, it's 5 o'clock. Top story of the day, of course, is that we are steamrolling towards the end of the Dan Snyder era. So let's talk about it with someone covering it.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
Today, that is the 100-year-old Ben Standig. Ben, what's up, man? Haven't talked to you in a hot second. How you been?
I'm doing all right. I feel this sale has aged me, so 100 almost feels appropriate at this point.
Okay, that's fair enough. I was talking to someone before the show about it, and obviously we've got the big event coming up on Thursday, and they were just like, just can't wait for it to be over. Obviously we're all excited for it, but just can't wait for it to be over. And I retorted and I said, that has been everyone in this entire area for 25 years, so that tracks.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost hard to, like, now that we're here, I'm not saying it's hard to put in perspective or think about it like what it means that this is about to be over, we think, but at the same time, it is a little like that, especially because, like, this sale has been, like, off, on our mind for, like, 3 different times now, and let's go already. Everybody's ready to move forward, including the teams like Dan Snyder. So let's just go.
Right. So I'm actually curious, Ben, in your interactions with the fan base, I kind of know how I feel about this. But do you feel like there will ultimately be like a gigantic release celebration feeling on Thursday? Or because the fact that this has happened in slow motion for 8 months and there has been these multiple major inflection points of he's agreed to sell, there's kind of the unofficial one, and there was the official one, and now we'll have like the official one, that this is going to be muted in some way, the celebration?
It's a good question. I get some people who have been living and dying with each turn, so they're like, oh, I thought this was over already. It's still going. And then other people who ask me, hey, so what's going on with this? Like, they're not in that minute to minute mode. So, I think there probably will be a fair amount of glorious relief and celebration when it happens. But yeah, I mean, it does kind of feel like we've already gone down this path a couple of times. I've been wondering each time, like, where is the celebration? Like, I remember when they were winning the Super Bowls, M Street in Georgetown was the primary place that people went and they flooded the streets. I don't know what that is anymore. You got Ashburn, you got Landover. Like, I don't know where anybody would even go. So I don't even know how we'll be able to tell definitively, other than, like, you guys are having an event and people go there. But, it's not like there's one place in the area where everybody's going to say we have to meet up here and, party like it's 1999 or something.
Well, that, of course, Ben, the answer is the bullpen. The answer is 4:30, the Burgundy and Sold party on Thursday, where I'm going to be broadcasting live, and we'll have all kinds of stuff going on stage, and bands and food and beer and Junkies and Chian and Beamich and Doc, and everyone's going to be like, the answer is the bullpen. Have some awareness of where you are, Ben Standig. Come on, man.
Apologies.
Yeah, all right. Ben Standig is with us here on the Hoffman Show. You've done fantastic stuff this last week or so of really diving into the best and the worst, and even best is a very relative term here, of the Dan Snyder era and putting a bow on this. Let's start with the piece that I know you've talked about on a couple of other shows already, the best of roster over the last 25 years. Like, any revelations or just like memories that flooded back, most interesting thing that you kind of rediscovered while putting together the best of a guy you forgot about, or kind of a conclusion you came to in the end that either they've over or underachieved based off the talent that's been here?
Yeah, I think some spots were relatively light with options, even though we're talking about 24 years. I think the most interesting debate I had was the most obvious position, and that's quarterback. how much do you weight RG3's one incredible season versus Kirk Cousins being the better, having multiple years of success? And ultimately I went with the RG3 because that was not just he was an electric player, but essentially was the highlight of the 24 years of Snyder. And even though RG3, crashed and burned from there, and he made a compelling case to be the quarterback on the bad list, I just decided that, if we're putting all this in perspective, as good as Kirk Cousins was, I still think the RG3 part of it is going to be what, not that I was going off of what we'll remember the most, but it was so memorable because of how impressive it was and how exciting it was, and that everybody thought, here they go. And really, by the time we got to 2013, it's been a downhill slide pretty much ever since.
So the Cousins-Griffin thing is interesting, and I have no problem with the way you phrase that, right? Like Robert's success, and it's really only a half a season, as Jordan Rodriguez, your colleague, highlighted quite well in her series, The Play Callers. Like, there were some major adjustments and things that happened, and they knew early in that season that they were trying to keep these secrets, and didn't really work that great for a lot of that first part, and then all of a sudden they go on the run in the back half of the season. But if you're going to name like an all quarter century team, like it is, to me, almost scary how concrete it is that Cousins is the answer. Like Cousins, and Ben, this actually goes to something that I think is interesting about the franchise in general over not just the last 24 years, but the entirety of it. Their quarterback play is abysmal for a franchise that's been around for, 91 years now. Like, Theismann's probably the best guy. Obviously, his career gets cut short due to injury. Sonny is a Hall of Famer. Sammy Baugh was fantastic. But the guy who's fourth all-time in Commanders passing yards, or Washington passing yards, is Cousins. And, Jason Campbell is seventh. It's the kind of thing that is so remarkable for a franchise that, by the way, has won a couple of three Lombardi trophies, that they have been that bad at the most important position for almost the entirety of their history.
Right. Well, the way we typically frame it is, look how great of a coach Joe Gibbs was, that he won 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks, rather than saying they never had a sustained success with any one player there. I mean, even Theismann with the injury, he was really hitting the tail end of things at that point before the injury. So I don't know how much longer he was going to have. Anyway, but yeah, no, and that's what, to go back to the Snyder and the bad list, or into these lists, the decision to bring in Jeff George when you had Brad Johnson was so infuriating, in part because they had been wandering the desert for years at that point, looking for a quarterback since Mark Rippon, and here's Brad Johnson, who this is a legitimate quarterback, and their first response from the new owner is, yeah, no, we don't want that guy. We want this guy over here who's a complete locker room chemistry killer, who's got a big arm, but oh no, you go for that guy. You're like, no, they just finally got a guy who could be the answer for a while, and then they were like, no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah. By the way, Brad Johnson, 13th all time on the Washington passing list. Taylor Heineke's 16th. I got to look at other teams to see how many teams have multiple guys, because also I guess if you're the Packers, you've had 2 guys for 20-something years, or actually longer than that, almost 30 years. So maybe it's not uncommon to have a guy who's had a couple of decent years, be 15th or whatever on your list if you've had good quarterback success. But it is pretty wild to look at this list. Ben Standig is with us here on the Hoffman Show. All right, so take us inside the bad list. What to you is the worst of the worst as you did your research for flubs on the field of the Snyder era?
Wow, I mean, there's just so much to go to here. If you wanted to say all things Jim Zorn was the answer, including just the fact that, and for the bad list, it wasn't to me just the performance of whichever individual. It was the process that led to getting to that person. So in the case of Zorn, hiring him as the offensive coordinator before you've even named the head coach, obviously that's insane. And then when they floated a trial balloon to bring in Jim Fossil, when that, didn't go over well, they just pivoted to Zorn, who obviously was, ultimately overmatched in the situation. That's terrible. You can point to the GM, choosing the worst between Bruce Allen and Vinny Serrato. They're both horrible for different ways. But ultimately, I think for me, and this is something I've thought about for a long time, it's not the worst in like it wasn't like this guy was like so bad he barely even played. But Jeff George to me was ultimately the worst in that it was a sign of what was to come under Dan Snyder, that he really was playing fantasy football as an owner. Like I said, going with a guy who has a lot of hype, but like so many negatives surrounding him, to the point that when Marty Schottenheimer became the coach and he was basically saddled with Jeff George, George started the first two games. They lost by a combined 67-3. And not only did Marty bench him, he cut him, the starting quarterback, after two games. And then I think that also led to Dan Snyder at the end of the year firing Marty because he wasn't having fun. And Jeff George was one of his ideas of fun. And that really did sort of let us know ultimately how the next, many years were going to unfold here. So, like, for me, you could point to Albert Haynesworth, of course, and so many other things. But, like, Jeff George was just, from the perspective of Snyder, really, to me, epitomized what was going to happen here.
So is there for you a defining characteristic of the Snyder era, or a defining throughway through the Snyder era?
Well, I think that in the beginning in particular, there was, like I said, there was no feel for chemistry. Bringing in Deion Sanders, for example, look, obviously, Deion Sanders is one of the best players of all time. But when he got here, he only played the 1 year before leaving. But it wasn't just that they brought him in, then he left. It's that because of his return ability, they moved on from Brian Mitchell. And they also sort of put Darrell Green, who was admittedly at the end of his career as well, but they kind of unceremoniously put him on the side as well. And those were like the two last connections to the Super Bowl era teams. And just to sort of dismiss those guys seemingly so easily, I think really shows that, again, locker room chemistry was such a non-consideration here. And to my eyes, that really lasted all the way through to maybe about the point where Jonathan Allen gets drafted and they start, focusing more on the draft than they do free agency. And like, that is a long time to gut what it means to be a member of this franchise in a positive way. And, I think that ultimately on so many levels was the driving force. There's nothing mattered beyond the hype, the name. Could this bring in more revenue, get us more attention, rather than what does it actually mean to build a team that wins? And I don't think they got back to that mind frame for a very long time.
I think that's a really interesting and good take. One of the other obvious through lines is the incredible, I don't even know if there's a modifier you put, just the incredible run of coaches, or good and bad. There you have Spurrier and Zorn, two of the worst that in recent memory in the entire league. You also have these incredible coaches that come through that 2012 pipeline and then disperse elsewhere and become successful. Is there any turning point, Ben? Is there an exit they passed, an off-ramp or an on-ramp, if you want to look at it that way, that you think could have changed things on the football side for the better? Or, if you want to say, I guess I would say the one, business culture, franchise thing is if they choose La Famina over Bruce. I don't know how many other points there are like that are so clear in the 24 years. But on the football side, is there a singular decision where if they go down a different path, specifically with a coach, that things could have gone differently?
Well, to go back to the RG3 situation, I think one of Dan's many flaws was he really was a fanboy and really cozied up to players and would essentially take their side more than he would his coaches. I mean, Jim Zorn's tenure, look, obviously it ended terribly, but he started 6-2, but it was when Clinton Portis went to Dan Snyder and kind of said, hey, this guy's riding me too hard. That's when Zorn lost all power and credibility. And I do wonder if Snyder had not gone all in on, being BFFs with RG3, seemingly. What does that do for the Shanahan situation? Because obviously that was a huge rift with everyone, and we know to this day that the Shanahans are love to crap on this place, and you wonder whether it's Kyle Shanahan or McVay or LaFleur or whatever. Is it conceivable that Mike Shanahan plays it out and then turns it over to somebody else? Is it Kyle? That would seem to be logical. Or, maybe one of those other guys sticks around if that whole era doesn't end in flames. So, you never know, of course. But, RG3 had a lot of, he had a lot going on in his own world in terms of being, insecure and seemingly promoting himself. Instead of leaning in towards defending the coach, he leans into defending the player, and then, it goes from there. So I think that's a pretty significant one, especially if it could have been Kyle Shanahan, seeing what he's done since.
Sure. And then you've also got, Sean LaFleur, Mike McDaniels on that staff, although Mike had to go through a lot of stuff to get to where he is today on a personal level. Obviously, O'Connell comes through. There's so many guys throughout the years. It's kind of wild. Ben Standig is with us from The Athletic, of course, Commanders beat reporter here on the Hoffman Show. You can also catch us live every day. Don't forget, streaming on YouTube at the Team 980. So, Ben, you also took a dive into Josh Harris and what he did with the Sixers when he first got there, the green lighting of the process. What did you learn in reporting that piece that you think is applicable to the Commanders?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think for a lot of people, when you mentioned that the process with the Sixers, aggressive losing is one way that people view it. And a lot of people, even just seeing it on Twitter today in response to my story, talking about how the process failed and, the Sixers have gotten nowhere and all these things. And, it's all incredibly false. The Sixers are on the best 6-year run they've had basically since Allen Iverson played. And sure, they haven't advanced to a conference final, but they're in contention. And all you can kind of do in sports is put yourself in contention and then hope, the breaks go your way. And I think so much of what evolved for them was how well the process worked. And ultimately what the process really is about asset gathering. In basketball, that means trying to get as many premium picks as possible because, as we know, one player can truly change an organization. In the NFL, I think it's more about a volume play. How do you get the most picks with 7 rounds and a 53-player roster? And I do think there's something there that an owner like Harris could be of interest to him. And look, obviously, as we know, the Commanders still, until Sam Howell proves himself, have questions at quarterback. They also have a ton of money available next year right now on the salary cap. So I think it's actually a pretty interesting landscape that Harris is going to have for moving forward. And I'm not saying they're going to quote unquote tank, but at the same time, I think there's something there that he could explore that's in the world of what the process is really all about. Just don't focus on the losing, focus on the analytics and the asset gathering and how to build a sustainable contender over time. I think there's something there to look at, and that's kind of what I tried to hone in on and talk to people, including other owners in the league, about how they consider when to rebuild, when to retool, and how do you go about that.
So this brings us back to a point where we can bring everything that we've talked about together, and specifically your answer about what goes wrong in the Snyder era being about chemistry and a lack of understanding of people and humans and how a team comes together and what it means to have an identity, not just from a style of play standpoint, but a personality standpoint. And one of the big criticisms of the process in Philadelphia was that it completely lacked that. There were so many guys in and out. They didn't care if they were any good. They failed to build culture. And to an extent, there's some people that would say that is why the Ben Simmons and all these different guys have failed, and James Harden wants out again. And outside of Embiid just being a rock who's so good it doesn't matter, that there are other things that have led to their failures. Are you concerned about that element at all? And do you get the sense that Harris, one, would agree with that criticism, and two, if he does, has learned from it?
Yeah, I mean, I do understand the notion that because they were so aggressively not trying to win, meaning management, not the players or the coaches, I think it did take a little probably extra time for the Embiids of the world who are staying around to be part of it, to understand what it takes to win in the NBA. I think the thing is, though, with the NFL, it's almost impossible to quote unquote tank in the same way because there's just too many players, right? I mean, even if you said Washington's going to, every single player that's a free agent after this year right now, the Montez Sweats, the Cam Curls, you just say we're moving on from everybody. All right, but you still would have John Allen, Deron Payne, Terry McLaurin. You still would have those kinds of guys. And even if you said, well, let's just move on from those guys, I mean, you still then would likely have, some version of a Kendall Fuller or Cam Curl or, Charles Leno. There's just too many players to completely get rid of. So, if you're smart and you understand, okay, we do want to move on from certain salaries and we're willing to let some guys go, but, we have to have 22 starters. So let's keep some guys who, are exactly what we're talking about here, the kind of guys we want to build around from a culture standpoint. I think that's a little bit easier. Whereas in the NBA, the stars set and if you're going to tank, you got to get rid of them. So I think it's a little bit easier to do over here. But yeah, I would think that Josh Harris has learned a lot of lessons from that experience for sure.
Ben Standig wrote about all of it in The Athletic. You can, of course, get that in the great Athletic app or theathletic.com. Ben links all his stories on Twitter. And Ben, you're pretty good on Threads. How are you managing to do all that? I'm impressed. I can't seem to keep up with both.
Threads, I'm only sort of remembering to drop in a link there. Their algorithm is going to have to change a lot for me to get invested with that. But you got to try. The kids are on social media. You got to try to find them.
Yeah, you got to try to find the audience wherever it is. It's a struggle, I understand. Well, we appreciate your time. Also, check out the Standing Room Only podcast, which I guess, Ben, are you excited? You get to start recording on the sidelines again. Training camp is just a week away.
I'm not mentally prepared for any of that.
We got a week.
Enough for the. Yeah, I'm not ready for that, but all right, I guess I have no choice.
Yeah, okay. Well, if you want to pull me on to a sideline interview, you just let me know. I'll be out there.
Deal.
All right. Ben Standig, everybody. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, man.
All right, that's Ben Standig, of course, of The Athletic. Make sure you check out all his work there. When we get back, circle back to our main topic of the day, the NFL's, let's call it issue with the running back market. J.I. Halsell, longtime NFL agent, will join us to give his thoughts and perspective next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Always live on YouTube too, youtube.com/at the Team 980. Biggest story today going on in sports is that NFL running backs are understandably upset because none of them can seem to get a long-term contract. There is not an NFL running back out there that has gotten a $10 million plus multi-year deal since 2021. So what's the solution? What are agents trying to do to make sure their guys get played? Well, let's bring one on to help find out. J.I. Hallstill is the Executive Vice President of Client Compensation at Three Strands Sports, salary cap analyst with us here at the Team 980 once upon a time, and always a great guest. J.I., how you doing, man? How's your summer been?
I'm doing well, man. Can't complain. I appreciate you having me on as always, Craig.
Absolutely. So just generally, broadly, as you're watching this all take place yesterday, a ton of the top running backs in the league take to Twitter and other social media to let their feelings known. Like, what do you make of what's going on with the running back position in the NFL right now in the most general sense?
Yeah, no, I mean, it simplistically comes down to supply and demand. What my takeaway from yesterday, one of the more interesting kind of observations from yesterday is that one of the running backs who was very outspoken about it was Austin Eckler. And what's really interesting about him is that he's kind of the poster child for why the running backs don't get paid, because he's a guy who's a former college free agent who turned into a top-tier NFL running back. And so from a club perspective, you're like, well, why should I go pay a veteran running back in excess of $10 million per year when I can go get a running back on day 3 or in college free agency who could potentially be a top-tier running back? So when we go back to this concept of supply and demand, don't get me wrong, it is hard to find productive players at any position in the NFL, but when the supply in college free agency and via the draft is so significant at the running back position, it makes it harder to justify the price point.
No doubt. And the difference between like a great running back and a good running back when it comes to winning doesn't seem to be that much. I'm sure you have all sorts of data sets that you're referencing for different positions when you're going to negotiations on behalf of your clients. So what does that data say about the running back's ability to affect what ultimately teams care about the most, which is winning football games?
Yeah, no, I mean, the days of the 80s and 90s where we were a 60% run, 40% pass league are no longer, right? We are now a 60+% pass league, 40% run league. So therefore, if you are a running back, the days of the bell cow, 3 yards in a cloud of dust don't exist anymore. If you are going to get paid as a running back, you better be a pretty good receiver, right? But I actually have experience in this in that I worked with the agents who represented Chris Carson of the Seattle Seahawks, who, is no longer in the NFL. We just did that deal 2 seasons ago. And Chris Carson is a great example of the traditional throwback running back where he wasn't super productive in the pass game, but an effective runner. And he was a guy who was a college free agent when he came into the league with Seattle. And when he did get his second contract, it becomes more of a risk reward. Like, look, this may be your last contract of your NFL career. So let's not get overly greedy and just lock in this guarantee and try to do a deal that is not exactly a home run, but is a solid deal. And ultimately, we got that for Chris. And a year into that deal, he's out of football because he had a career-ending neck injury. So those are all of the things that both the agents and the clubs are taking into consideration when you think about the running back position and how that affects winning.
J.I. Hallstill is with us again, the Executive Vice President of Client Compensation at Three Strands Sports. To me, though, J.I., there would seem to, at least intellectually speaking, be a breaking point where if you're Josh Jacobs or you're Saquon Barkley and you're the NFL's leading rusher or you're the ultimate 3-down back weapon who, if Saquon Barkley wanted to be an elite slot receiver, he could be. Like, those guys, it would seem like, should be getting paid, but they're not. How do you make sense of that very top end of the market still not being able to overcome their position?
Yeah, I think that a lot of these deals, not just with the running backs or high-end running backs, a lot of these deals are derivatives of the circumstances around the negotiation. So what does that mean? It means that if you're Saquon Barkley or Josh Jacobs or Tony Pollard, one, clubs have the right to franchise tag you, right? That's in the CBA. The union has not been successful in negotiating that out of the CBA. And then it goes back to the supply and demand concept that we've already talked about. Specific to those three guys, there is an element of I've seen you do it for one, maybe 1.5 seasons, but I haven't seen you do it over a long period of time. When we think about Saquon early in his career, injury bug. When we think about Josh Jacobs, was solid. Last year was really his breakout year. And Tony Pollard, we've only really seen it do for 1.5 years, and then he finished last season with a broken leg. So, again, circumstances in a lot of ways dictate these deals. So how did Alvin Kamara get his deal, or Christian McCaffrey, or Todd Gurley? Those deals, again, were functions of the circumstances. In the case of the Saints and Kamara, I know that they valued his pass-catching ability. If he wasn't such a great pass catcher, they probably would not have done that deal, and also the head coach valued him. So, again, it's really just the circumstances that these guys find themselves in, and quite honestly, when you look at next year's free agent market at the running back position, the supply and demand doesn't get any better, because now you've got these three guys on the market. You're going to have Derrick Henry potentially on the market. You're going to have a guy like A.J. Dillon on the market, or a Jonathan Taylor on the market. So the supply and demand dynamics going into next year free agency aren't exactly in favor of running backs.
No, definitely not. But there is also the nature of markets is that eventually there will be an inefficiency and someone will exploit it, and then people will try to copy that, and then it will no longer be an inefficiency. Like, where do you think the hole is for someone to exploit that? Is it what San Francisco did last year, trading for McCaffrey? Like, is that Kyle Shanahan realizing I've got this very, very special player that I can use differently than everyone else, or is he kind of an exception? Where does the market inefficiency come?
Yeah, I think so. I was talking to the club about this earlier today, specifically about the running back market, and it kind of segued into how, in a lot of ways, Kirk Cousins changed the trajectory of the quarterback market. Because if you think about Kirk Cousins being just a solid quarterback and him getting the deal that he got in Minnesota, well, now if you're an elite quarterback and you see a mediocre quarterback get that type of deal in Minnesota, you're like, oh, well, I need to be 10, 15 million above that deal. And so that changed the trajectory of the quarterback market. The question becomes, to your point, who's that person that changes the trajectory of the running back market? And perhaps it does come off of a player who got franchise tagged, right? If we believe that Josh Jacobs, who historically was just a solid running back, not an elite running back, gets tagged, well, now when the next elite running back, let's just say Jonathan Taylor, comes back to form this coming season, well, do the Indianapolis Colts value him and say, well, if Josh Jacobs got $10 million in 2023 under the tag, and we believe that Jonathan Taylor is exponentially a better running back, well, the Colts need to buy into that concept of we're going to pay you $14, $15 million per year. It takes just one team. In the case of Kirk Cousins, it was the Minnesota Vikings. In the case of the running back market, perhaps it's the Indianapolis Colts and Jonathan Taylor, and that changes or corrects the market.
So earlier in the show, J.I. Halsell is our guest NFL agent here on the Hoffman Show. So we were kicking this topic around, and the best solution we could come up with in the time constraints of our radio show, having done very little thinking about it beforehand in terms of the actual solution, is some kind of automatic trigger in a contract. So let's say Ezekiel Elliott is the prime example. He comes in, he's incredible. He's the best back in the league, arguably his first couple of years. He's rewarded with the awards that come with that, All-Pros, Pro Bowls, etc. Is there a way to make it so that if you, let's say, get an All-Pro nomination and or a certain number of Pro Bowls in your first 2 or 3 years, that it automatically triggers a bonus or an increase in salary or some kind of mechanism to get guys compensated? And this is not just for running backs. It will be most felt at the running back position because they make the most immediate impact and they uniquely have their best years earlier in their career. But even a guy like Sauce Gardner last year, like he's underpaid. He's one of the best 5 corners in football based off what he did last year, and he's getting paid like a rookie. Is there a way that could be negotiated under current rules? And is that something that you think the union will look at in the future? Because I think there's also, sorry to be long-winded here, but one of the things we talked about in our conversation and kind of discovered is, well, if the rookies are not going to be quite as cheap if they're awesome, do we actually invest a little bit more in some veterans on the back end of our roster? And does that start to help prolong careers of guys whose current careers are ending after 5 years when they could be ending after 8?
Yeah, no, I mean, so the introduction of the rookie scale with 2011 CBA in a lot of ways, or actually did, take away the ability to add incentives into these rookie deals, because pre-2011, it wasn't uncommon, particularly with first-round picks, to see incentive packages in those deals. That being said, the give and take, though, was that in rookie deals, under the 2011 rookie compensation system, we have what is called the year 4 escalator, which is based upon play time, which is also based upon, or another way to earn your year 4 escalator is, if you've made it to a Pro Bowl, so on and so forth. The challenge, though, is it escalates your base salary to like dollars, not $10 million, right? And then if you're a first-round pick, as we all know, you have the 5th-year option, which can be a good amount of money, and it is fully guaranteed. It's just at the crux of your question, the problem is that we cannot add these incentives into rookie contracts, and obviously that's the problem with the running backs in particular, is that their best years are often while they're playing under their rookie contracts.
Right. So is there a way, like, if that is brought to the table by the NFLPA in the next negotiations, the senior leadership, the new executive director is like, look, we can't, because basically the model right now is, can we exploit cheap labor? And I think if I'm labor, I don't want that to be the owner's business model. I don't want you to rely on cheap labor, because that makes me very replaceable the minute I'm good and thus expensive. And so if you are the NFLPA and you bring that to the bargaining table of escalators of, hey, if a guy makes first team all pro in his rookie year, like, it's there. Here's what the new contract looks like moving forward. Is that something that you think the owners would remotely talk about, or is that just shut down and there's no way we're ever getting there, even if it's intellectually a good solution?
I think from an NFLPA standpoint, an agent standpoint, you absolutely want some sort of additional tier of year 4 escalator, right, that gets them to their market value. Or do we? And I wouldn't be an advocate for this, because players want to get to free agency. But what I was going to propose is that, do you add a 5th-year option for rounds outside of the first round for guys who have proven to be all pros and super productive? From a management, from a club perspective, no, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, owners and front offices want to find cheap labor. They want to keep the labor as cheap as possible. So they don't want, those types of escalators and 5th-year options. So it would be a function of collective bargaining, and the union would have to be willing to give up something in exchange for getting this benefit to a small percentage of their player constituents.
So what about this one in terms of feasibility at the bargaining table? The NFLPA has not been able to get the franchise tag off the table entirely. What about if a player makes, let's say, 3 Pro Bowls or 1 first-team All-Pro? They can't be tagged.
That's an interesting proposal. I think that would be a good kind of middle ground, right? Because obviously clubs, they value being able to hold a player's rights for that 1 year under the tag. But at the same time, the players in the union need to be trying to find some way to get that off of the table. And so what you just proposed is potentially, a good middle ground solution, because that's where a lot of these end up, right? With some middle ground where everyone can hang their hat on something. And so what you propose there could be a middle ground solution.
How do I get in the room, J.I.? Where do I got to go? I know the union's somewhere in one of these buildings in D.C. Where do I got to go?
I was about to say, they're around the corner from you in downtown Northwest D.C. So you gotta get in their new and there, maybe that's your opening, right? They're getting a new executive director.
Right.
You can get in that guy's ear. If you know anybody who worked with him at Booz Allen, ta-da, there's your in.
I'll have to go through my very thin people who work at consulting agencies Rolodex. It's not. I'm the only person in D.C. who doesn't know a zillion people who are consultants.
Used to work for Accenture, and my dad worked for Booz Allen. So there were like 2 degrees of separation if you lived in the D.C. area with someone who worked in consulting.
Yeah, no, I probably know someone who knows someone. That is the nature of being here. Jay, always great to talk, man. Appreciate your time as always, and have a great last week here of the off season. And I'm sure you and all your guys are getting ready to go.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it as always for having me on, man.
Absolutely. J.I. Halsell, everybody. Again, he is the executive vice president of client compensation at 3 Strand Sports with us here on the Hoffman Show. All right. We have, let's see, Anthony, we're in one of these weird time conundrums here. What do we want to do with ourselves? That was a very slow turn. In your rolly chair.
This is a tough thing to do. To be honest, I think we go through the AFC South just because I think it's an easier division to go through.
Okay, I'm down with that. Let's do that. Okay, so we've been doing this series here on the show of best players of the 21st century. And I thought if we had more time with Z, I would have asked him the best player that he ever played against. But it's funny because the AFC South, why don't you ask him who the best Colt is of the 21st century? It's actually not that interesting because it's Peyton Manning, and that's the end of the discussion. Like, done. Finito. But the other teams are much more interesting. Let's start with Jacksonville. Do they have anybody who should qualify? Who's the best Jacksonville Jaguar of the 21st century?
I think we need to include Maurice Jones-Drew for starters.
He's definitely on the list, and he was awesome. Is he at the level of some of the other players that we've talked about? Definitely not. I don't know that he's going to make the Hall of Fame necessarily. He's not already in, is he? I'm not. Like, he was good for a long time, but is Maurice Jones-Drew going to be a Hall of Famer?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
He was good, but I don't think so.
Yeah, he was excellent. Logan Paulson's teammate at UCLA. Great podcast guest, an excellent analyst for NFL Network. But he played 8 years in Jacksonville. He rushed for 8,000 yards total. He only had 3 1,000-yard seasons. Now, one of them was a 1606 year where he averaged 100 yards a game. It was first-team All-Pro. He was second in Rookie of the Year voting in his rookie year. Like, Mojo was awesome. But it's not like, Peyton Manning or some of the other guys that we've talked about, obviously. You have, to me, it goes back to some of those early 2000s teams. But then you run into the problem that we've run into multiple times, which is that, like, Jimmy Smith, to me, is probably the right answer.
But he crosses into the
90s, and
Yep.
some of his best years were in the late 90s, 97, 98, 99. He makes the Pro Bowl. By the time you get to 2000, he makes another one, and then he's second in comeback player of the year voting in 2001, makes a Pro Bowl, and then never makes a Pro Bowl again, and his career's done in 2005. So, the Jags are tough, man. And then, Tony Baselli, Hall of Famer, right? He's the best player in franchise history, but his career is super short, 95 to 01, and obviously only 2 of that comes in the 2000s. I can't believe he made the Hall of Fame and played 7 years. He played 91 career games. He's in the Hall of Fame. He was that good when he played. That's
actually insane.
That's crazy.
God dang.
I mean, you have Byron Leftwich, David Garrard. You've got Lawrence, who's probably going to wind up being the guy, but has he done enough yet in 2 years? No. I think Maurice Jones-Drew. I mean, Mark Brunell.
I mean, you got Calais Campbell. He only played 3 seasons there, but he was a Pro Bowler 3 years, got an All-Pro. That's just 3 years, though. Probably too small of a stint.
I think it's Maurice Jones-Drew.
I would like to lean him to. Just of the century. To go off what we're.
He's the only guy that was like really good and there for a while and really good. So we're gonna go with Maurice Jones-Drew. When it comes to leading the team in AV, approximate value, Lawrence has been the guy the last 2 years. Calais Campbell had 2 years. Bortles had 2 years. Paul Posluszny had 2 years. Mojo had 2 years. Garrard had 2 years. There's a third for Jones-Drew. And then Fred Taylor, who was also really good, but was mostly a 90s guy. Fred Taylor's got a little bit of a case. Jones-Drew was better, though. And, yeah, we'll go with Maurice Jones-Drew. We probably just spent way too much time on the mediocrity of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Okay, Tennessee Titans.
That one's tough.
It is tough. They've actually got contenders. Obviously, in recent memory, the answer is Derrick Henry.
Yep.
He's been their leading rusher 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years in a row. By the way, while he's been there, Kevin Byard has been awesome at the safety position.
Yeah.
Nobody talks about it. And Jeffrey Simmons is incredible as defensive tackle. But then you get back into the earlier part of the century. Steve McNair was great, but mostly 90s. Javon Curse was absolutely unbelievable in his day, but he kind of first couple of years, flash. He was AP All-Pro his first year. Never got it again. And that year, by the way, was 1999.
Chris Johnson?
Yeah. I think Chris Johnson might wind up ultimately being the answer.
Over Derrick Henry? No. Can't do it over Derrick Henry.
How many years was CJ was good for a long time, man.
But he was only with the Titans for
That's
6
true.
seasons.
That's true. He did
6
have
seasons. He had 3 Pro Bowls.
2,500 yards from scrimmage
Yeah.
that 1 year. I think it's probably like Henry's been doing it long enough since like 2016
Yep.
that it's probably Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I would lean Derrick. And they
Okay.
both have the offensive player of the year, but Derrick Henry got more Pro Bowls, and he's just been there longer as well.
Yeah. Okay. And that leaves. Let's see. We did the Colts. We did the Jags. We did the Texans. Or no, we didn't do the Texans.
We have to do the Texans.
So the Texans have only existed in this this decade. We don't have the crossover into the 90s problem. I think actually that one's fairly easy. DeAndre Hopkins has got to be the right answer. Well,
No.
Andre Johnson.
No.
No? Who?
J.J. Watt.
Oh, yeah. No, you're right. God, they've had some dudes.
Yeah, they have. Andre Johnson was a dog.
He was. No, Watt's the correct answer. Watson. I mean, Andre Johnson should be in the Hall of Fame, if I'm not mistaken. No, 7-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All-Pro, not yet in the Hall of Fame. But dude played 12 years in Houston and was just absolutely insane. He had back-to-back 1,500-yard seasons in 08 and 09.
He was nasty, man. He was nasty.
Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins was arguably the best receiver in football for a nice stint while he was there. Played 7 years. But no, you're right. J.J. Watt is the correct answer. I don't know why I didn't immediately say that. I pulled up the names and was looking at the receiver column, and I was like, oh, yeah, hey, dum-dum, look over here. J.J. Watt will go to the Hall of Fame 5 years from now. 5-time Pro Bowl, 5-time All-Pro, which seems low. How did he not make more? I guess he had a bunch of injuries.
Yep.
But still, multiple-time Defensive Player of the Year, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. He was on the 2010s Hall of Fame team. And just for good measure, although it was with Arizona, the way he finished last year, he played every single game last year and finished with double-digit sacks on a team that stunk. He had 12.5 sacks last year. It was most since 2018.
Dang, we didn't have anybody with 12 and a half sacks last year.
Nope.
We could have used that.
Yeah. You think? He said 2 sack seasons.
It's just still fascinating that he only has 5 All-Pros and 5 Pro Bowls. But injuries will be relevant.
Every season but his rookie year that he played in double-digit games except for 2020 and 2022, he made it.
Yeah.
He just had a 7, an 8, a 5, a 3 in terms of games played. So there's that. All right, that's the AFC South. Tomorrow we'll do the NFC North and the NFC South. We'll wrap that up. I guess we could, Anthony, save one for Friday if you wanted to. Obviously, Thursday we won't be doing it because we'll be broadcasting live from Burgundy and Sold. So we'll play that by ear tomorrow. But coming up next, Take Command Tuesday. Our chat from the podcast with Ross Tucker is next. Why he questions Ron Rivera's decision-making at the quarterback spot with Sam Howell. Next on the Team 980. sir, it's the Hoffman Show. And yes, ma'am. Yes, whoever's listening. That's me, Greg Hoffman, host of this fine radio program. Also host of a show called Take Command with the other man you just heard in that introduction, Logan Paulson. This week, we had the great pleasure of being joined by NFL analyst Ross Tucker. As always, I want to give you a little bit of the conversation we have on the podcast here on the radio. For the full episode, subscribe to Take Command wherever you get your podcast. And to hear the snippet, just keep listening right now. Joining us now, Ross Tucker, national analyst for a bunch of different outlets, Westwood One specifically. You've been doing playoff games for them for years, analyst work for them for years. Ross, I know you have some exciting things coming down the pike, so make sure everyone's tuned into their local press releases to see where Ross is going to be more this upcoming NFL season. He also does the Eagles TV analyst work on their preseason. So Ross, very much appreciate your time. And I want to just dive right in with kind of this, this national perspective of the Commanders. I don't want to make you speak for literally every national analyst, but they have found themselves at the bottom of many, many rankings. I think a lot of that has to do with the quarterback situation here. And people just don't know what to make of Sam Howell, or it seems like those that have made up their minds say he's not going to be good enough. What do you make of Ron Rivera's decision to roll with Howell for the 2023 season?
Yeah, well, good to see you guys. Craig, good for having me. And I love that you got like a true blood and guts guy like Logan in the podcast game. That's amazing. Logan was when he played, one of maybe 7 tight ends that still blocked a little bit in the NFL, I think. So I always had an appreciation for Logan's game and the way he went about it because, man, way back, I always sound so old when I say this, but way back in the day, like, tight ends had to block. Yeah, and actually, there was always one guy on every out of the 3 on every team that was like just straight blocker. Like that's all he did. That has changed quite a bit. So love that Logan's in on the dark side now with the media. Yeah. Listen, I think the Commanders in everybody's mind are last in the division, and I think that's because they have more questions at the more important positions than the other teams do, right? The Eagles, kind of a known commodity. The Cowboys won 12 games last year. We also know that the Giants had a surprisingly good year last year, and they've even upgraded, getting that new center in John Michael Schmitz, whereas the Commanders, quarterback question for sure. And by the way, question doesn't mean bad. Question just means unanswered. Sam Howell might be awesome. We don't know. I hope he is. It'd be more fun if he is. It'd be great. But then you combine Howell with a new OC, so you got a new system and a questionable offensive line, I would say at this point, with some of the guys they have in there. There's unknowns on the O-line. There's unknowns with Bieniemy calling plays. There's unknown with Sam Howell as a quarterback. That's just too much for people. I don't blame them. I mean, if the Commanders answer all those questions positively, can they be better than the Giants and maybe have a winning season? Sure. But in the NFL, most of the time, when you have 3 major questions like that, you don't answer all 3 of them in the affirmative.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I think that's, like a really good perspective to bring in. Something I'd like to ask you, though, is you've seen kind of a precedent, at least in recent history, of offensive play callers coming to new systems. Obviously, Jacksonville with Patterson, New York with Daboll, and them elevating offenses in a way that's kind of unexpected. And I think, he's one of the best offensive minds in football, and having a guy that's had such a close proximity to him seems like a benefit. Do you think he can bring Sam along? Do you think he can insulate the offensive line? I kind of feel like if there's one factor that needs to be answered in the affirmative, it needs to be Eric Bieniemy and his ability to call plays and elevate this group. Do you think he can get that done?
Yeah, you know what? You're probably right, Logan. Like out of the 3 questions, the one that does the most to help solve the other 2. Although if Sam Howell's awesome, he can make Bieniemy and the O-line look good too, right? If Sam Howell turns out to be awesome. But no, the Bieniemy thing is interesting because like when you mentioned Daboll or Doug Peterson, my initial reaction was I watched both those guys call plays
That's true.
and have a lot of success elsewhere, right? Like Peterson with the Eagles winning the Super Bowl, Nick Foles, Daboll in Buffalo with Josh Allen putting up crazy numbers. Whereas Bieniemy, which has always kind of been somewhat of a mystery, didn't really call the plays in Kansas City, right? Andy Reid gets the credit for that. So the thing I like about the Commanders, I think is so interesting, Bieniemy bet on himself in a major way, right? Like, let's put it this way. Bieniemy thinks he can do it. Bieniemy thinks he's the man, and he's gonna get the offensive line to play well, get Howe to play well. But I mean, first of all, there's a bunch of coaches that have left Andy Reid, and I'd say have mixed success.
It's a great
other
point.
places.
It's a great
You know,
point.
like a Matt Nagy, who had some success, right? Peterson obviously has had some ups and downs, but a lot of ups when he was in Philadelphia and a good run last year in Jacksonville. But guys, his quarterback was Patrick Mahomes. I mean, have you heard of him? Have you seen that guy play? I mean, I am confident that I could be at least a middle of the road offensive coordinator if Patrick Mahomes was my quarterback. So we'll see. It's going to be very different for Bieniemy. I mean, maybe he goes back to the Alex Smith playbook, and maybe Sam Howell can pull some of that stuff off, which I think would be interesting. But yeah, I think you can make an argument. Although, you know what? I can make an argument for all of them. If the O-line ends up gelling and playing really well, man, that gives Sam Howell a much better chance. It makes it a lot easier on Bieniemy. As you know, and we all know, it's a symbiotic relationship between all three of these entities, and they're all very much tied together because they need each other to succeed.
So here's the thing that I think I get caught up on a bit, Ross, and where a lot of fans certainly get caught up that are far more emotionally invested than me, is this team was 8-1 last year. Like, people talk about them like they were a 4-win team. They won 8 games last year. And I guess the question I would ask,
with average quarterback play.
I would not go that far. That is being far too kind to the garbage quarterback play that was here last year. The question I would ask is, do you think this team is better? Because I think I look at it, and Logan and I have talked about this, so I can speak for him from our conversations, just relay what he says, not speak for him. But like, we both think they're better. We think that Bieniemy can elevate significantly. We think that again, the quarterback play was poor for a lot of last year. And then defensively, I think that we have higher hopes for more consistency, what they were in the second half of last year, much more than they were in the first. And I think it's trying to square, okay, if they were 8-1 last year, we think they're better this year. Why does everyone think they're going to barely win 6 games? And I think that is where a lot of folks struggle. So I would simply ask you this: do you think they're better than last year in terms of what you project for them in 2023?
No, I think they're about the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
And I mean, look, I called the Eagles game, Monday Night Football, when they beat the Eagles fair and square in Philly. I mean, that was unbelievable. And I don't know. I know you guys got rid of Scott Turner, and I'm sure there's reasons why, but I remember coming away extremely impressed with his game plan and how they played keep away in that game and won that football game. It was, I mean, until the Super Bowl, it was the only game Jalen Hurts lost as a starter last year, and it was against, and I thought Heineke had some solid games like that where in the fourth quarter he was a gamer, found a way for them to win. I think a lot of it has to do with the interior of the offensive line in particular. That interior trio, how well those guys are able to perform. We talked about how, obviously, because the thing is, and this must drive, Commanders fans crazy, you have a championship D-line. You have a championship receiving core, right? And maybe you could argue the whole skill position group. Like, they have, I think if you talk to people now, they'd probably say the hierarchy of positional value would be quarterback, O-line, D-line, maybe receiver, secondary. I mean, my point is the Commanders have a lot of players that other teams would want. They have a lot of really good players, but, O-line and quarterback might be the two most important, and those are still big, big question marks, which, by the way, leads me to a whole other question, which I'm still annoyed about, because you guys both sit here and you both say, average at best quarterback play. For the life of me, I don't understand why they didn't put Sam Howell in earlier. I mean, I guess Rivera, with the ownership stuff, was trying to make the playoffs to save his job. So when Wentz went bad, he put Heineke in. I can't remember if Wentz got hurt or went bad, whatever.
He got hurt, yeah.
He got hurt. But anyway, it seemed to me like that would have been a real good time to get Hal a bunch of opportunities, a bunch of playing time last year. Or even like when they decided to put Wentz back in. Was that the Cleveland game?
Yeah.
What
that was
a disaster.
Yeah. I mean, the simple answer is Wentz was terrible through and through. He was good against Jacksonville in week 1. He was bad the rest of the games that he played. Heineke comes in because Sam is not ready yet. And because, Taylor had kind of earned that based off how he played the previous year. And he was good. That was the only good quarterback play they got was for what, Logan, 4 or 5 weeks of like average or in some games above average quarterback play. And by then, when he starts to go sideways in the Giants games, do you throw a rookie in there for his first starts in the most important games of your season? Or do you figure that Taylor's going to pull himself out of it or ultimately go back to Carson? I mean, I was screaming from the mountaintops, Carson, no, please just roll it with Taylor. Or if you want to pull the plug and throw a wild card in there and go with Sam. But I mean, the simple answer is Taylor played too well when he got that shot as the backup, and Sam hadn't gotten many reps, and that's the answer to the question.
I think it's really interesting that you have to think with the ownership change impending or whatever, you got to think that Rivera's on the hot seat and that he knows that, and he knows the new owner is likely to want to bring in his own people. And maybe that's part of Rivera wanting to go with Sam Howell. Maybe he thinks like his shot is if he can win a bunch of games and show that he's got a good, young, inexpensive quarterback such that the new owner will say, well, we don't want to mess with that. Because, I mean, I don't know. It's just remarkable to me that if this might be your last year as a head coach in the NFL, that you're going into it with a 5th-round pick with 1 start to his name.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's kind of an interesting thing, right? And I think a lot of people have put a lot of credence on that 1 start. The 1 start against Dallas late in the year where he was supported a lot by special teams and a lot of, quite frankly, by the defense. And I don't know. I don't know if you watched that game. Do you have any thoughts on, if you were the head coach, is that enough of a sample size to be like, I feel really good about Sam for 2023 for the Washington Commanders?
Thought he played well. I thought he looked the part. Did not look like the moment was too big for him. And the fact that I was like, well, why didn't they put him in earlier? Says I thought he played pretty well for sure. I guess the flip side of the counter would be, what were their other options this offseason?
Right.
They weren't going to get one of the top quarterbacks in the draft. So, and they did bring in sort of a security blanket in Brissett. And I got to tell you, if Brissett just plays for Washington the way he played last year in Cleveland, I think the Commanders could have a winning season for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, Brissett was pretty darn good last year, actually. Cleveland was bad because the defense was terrible. And when Watson came back, Watson wasn't very good. Brissett, they actually scored more points, and Brissett played better, I think, anybody anticipated.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that's kind of what we've said is if Sam Howell beats out Jacoby Brissett in camp, that means he's ready to be an NFL quarterback. Like, that's the bar. That's the barometer. And in some ways, that's what Taylor was last year as well. Like, I think Taylor's lower on that spectrum. But if you're better than Taylor Heineke, you're ready to play NFL quarterback. Sam was apparently not there last year, and I don't think he was given an honest chance to be. What's amazing is they thought Carson was, and despite the fact that he was throwing the ball on the ground all over training camp. But, they gave up a lot for him, and that's that. All right, Ross, let's wrap up with this. We got like 1 minute left. I want your favorite story that you can tell on a podcast from your time as a player in Washington. Your first stint at the start of your career or your last year of playing. Pick one, your favorite story.
Oh, geez, dude. I mean, I got about a million. The first one that jumps out to me was our first day of training camp in 2002. We had Marty Schottenheimer when I was a rookie in 2001. And whatever Marty said to us night before the training camp started, the hair on the back of my neck was standing up, I was ready to take my pen and just start stabbing people in the room. Like, I was so fired up. The next year, we have this ballyhooed coach, and he says, opening line, man, I went to 12 of these here training camps as a player, and, I can't remember one good thing I ever got out of it. I don't remember one thing that ever, but Mr. Snyder wants us to be here, so let's try to get something done tomorrow.
Oh,
that
my
was
gosh.
the start of the season speech for the 2002 Washington Redskins. We all looked at each other like, but then we were killing everybody in the preseason games. So we're like, okay, boy, I knew we were in trouble. I knew we were in trouble for a lot of different reasons, but yeah, I could give a bunch of other stories. You got to have me on again. I'll just do Spurrier and Schottenheimer stories.
That
really,
sounds
Schottenheimer's the man, so it'll be more just about that team. But yes, I'd be happy to tell Spurrier stories.
I would 1000% do an hour straight of Spurrier stories. 100% done. You let us know when we're there. Ross, this was great. Thanks for coming on, and we'll hopefully talk to you for Spurrier stories and other football analysis later this season.
Yeah, that'd be great. Great to see you guys. Great to talk with you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching this clip of Take Command. First, why don't you like it? It lets other people know that it was good, and then they should watch it too. And Logan, we have a new exclusive home for full episodes.
We do. 1067 The Fans YouTube page. Go check it out and please subscribe.
Yeah, do what Logan said.
Do it.
Very, very smart. When we get back here on the Team 980, we will discuss the latest in the rankings to come out. Commanders fans very confused on one particular set of defensive tackle ratings. A big, yeah, look at our guy, and another, wait, where's the other guy? We'll fill you in if you haven't heard next here on the Team 980.
Daniel Snyder has agreed to...
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always alive as well on the free Odyssey app. Hey, Anthony, guess what?
What?
I think we're probably about 47 hours from Dan Snyder having been not voted out of the NFL, but like Josh Harris's vote being approved.
Uh-huh.
We are getting there. It is happening. Wow, my clapping was off there. It is happening. It helps if your mic is on when you do it.
How are you gonna celebrate? I know you have to do a radio show, but are you gonna do some type of dance? Are you gonna do some type of, stand up? Are you gonna give a speech? Like, what are you gonna do to?
That's a good question, because we do anticipate it happening on the show. Like, we're guessing 5:30 by the time the announcement comes and the news gets reported and the whole deal. So play-by-play is talking. I need to get advice. I need to text. I'm gonna name drop. Should text Tarico to see if he wants to come on the show tomorrow and help prep me for the moment, because it's kind of like a play-by-play thing. And if Mike or Mike Breen or whoever is calling a game and they know there's history that's going to be made in the game. So when you call LeBron's scoring record, right? How do you prepare for that moment? Do you script something out? Or if it's game 7 of the finals or game whatever of the finals and you know someone's going to win, do you have a script ready? Because the big grandiose script moment happened already when they agreed to terms, and I did a 20-minute monologue on what it all means, right? That moment is not Thursday. Thursday is going to be a big, joyous, celebratory, by unanimous vote, the NFL owners have agreed to approve the sale of Dan Snyder. So clearly I should script that part because I don't know what I'm about to say. I think that was a good practice session. If that was real and the adrenaline was going, I probably could have done a lot better. I also didn't want anybody. I started saying that and I was like, what if someone tunes in and they think it just happened? It didn't. If you just tuned in, we're rehearsing for Thursday. Because Anthony asked me what I'm going to say or going to do, and I realized that I hadn't thought enough about that moment until right now. So I'm having a bit of an existential crisis on the air.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, I'd rather have it now than Thursday and then be like, they sold the team.
And then there's going to be a lot of people looking at you. And
right. So there's also we'll be broadcasting while there's all this other stuff happening. There's a definite chance that we have someone else on set. What I would like is, and I think we're going to have this, we'll obviously take some calls on Thursday, but also for folks coming out to the Burgundy and Soul party at the bullpen, we'll have a caller mic, if you will. We'll have a fan mic where people can hop on the show real quick and say what it means to them. And then, keep it moving, just like we do on the call. So we'll try to get a bunch of people in. So, I want to share that. Ultimately, what I want is to share that moment with fans who have been waiting on this moment for 24 years or some part of 24 years once they realize, this dude ain't it. So, will I stand? Probably. Also, I guess it depends. I anticipate bringing the streaming equipment. I can't stand if my camera's pointed at me seated down. I'd imagine I'll be very excitable. Got some fist pumping. This happened. Ba-da-ba, ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba. But yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think perhaps you've exposed something that I should talk about with you and CK and perhaps consult a Sheehan or someone.
Just trying to keep you on your P's and Q's, man. That's all.
Yeah, no, that's good producing.
Yeah.
What I do think about, this is peeling back the curtain big time, but what I do think about in those moments is be clean and make it sound good for the promo. You got to have that moment. Like, that is a historic moment. When they make the documentary and they have the sports radio clip, I get to be the clip. That's pretty cool. I can't be stumbling all over it in the clip. I gotta be good. If I'm head to head with Grant Paulson, I gotta beat Grant Paulson, and that's a high bar. That guy's good at talking. Lots of experience. High skill level. I gotta be the guy in the clip. 30 for 30. What if I told you that they finally got him to sell? So, Thursday. If you want to know what I'm going to do, come on Thursday and find out. At the very least, tune in. If you're watching on YouTube, do anticipate being able to put the show on YouTube. We'll figure all the details out. I will get there very early on Thursday, and we'll make it happen. We have been live from every other remote that we've done since we started streaming, and I don't anticipate Thursday being any different. If I can go live from inside Capital One Arena, I can go live from anywhere. That's my take on things. So we'll see you Thursday. Doors are at 4:30. Burgundy and Sold. B. Mitch will be there. Doc will be there. Sheehan will be there. Junkies will be there. It's gonna be a good time. All right. So John Allen, Anthony Haney, is the second-rated defensive tackle in Madden this year. I'm guessing you've seen the rankings.
I have.
What is more surprising? Jonathan Allen second or B.J. Hill first?
Probably B.J. Hill first.
I think that's correct.
B.J. Hill is a good player, though.
He's a very good player. He ain't the best defensive tackle in football.
Yeah, I will put some people above him.
So I think that Aaron Donald got over-penalized for being hurt last year.
But he's in the 99 club.
He is, but he was in 93 this year.
I think that's just for defensive tackles. I think if you put him at like a right end or a left end, then it'll be different. It's different. I don't know.
That's very silly.
I mean,
because you're right. He does. I'm now reading a story on ESPN.com. The Ram star became the most decorated 99 club member in Madden history Tuesday, being given the top rating in the video game for the 7th time in his career, passing Peyton Manning, who had done it 6. But when the graphics I saw had him at like 4th.
Yeah, that was just defensive tackles.
That doesn't make any sense because Donald plays defensive tackle. Madden, what are we doing?
But he plays everyone on the defensive line. And I think he's most dynamic probably at, what is he, a left end or right end? I don't even know.
He's
end.
As a 3 technique.
Yeah.
Where he kills people.
Yep.
But that's a defensive tackle spot. A 5 technique is on when you're getting towards the edge. A 3 tech, where he lines up most of the time, sometimes he lines up as a 1, is like you're between the guard and the tackle. It's defensive tackle. I don't get it. I'm confused. But John Allen's a 95. Yep. He's a 3 technique. Let's see. If we go by position here, defensive tackle, apply. Yeah. See, and now this is showing differently also earlier than what I saw on the chart, because now it says Chris Jones is number 1. And that makes a lot more sense
for
than
defensive tackle?
Yeah.
Okay, because I was just looking at the same thing you were looking at.
And this has got Jonathan Allen. And see, this on the official mat, were we all looking at a faulty graphic? Was someone messing with us on the internet? Because everyone saw the same thing. But now I'm on the official Madden 24 player ratings website. And it has Chris Jones at 96, Dexter Lawrence at 94, Quinnen Williams at 93, John Allen at 92. And that feels correct. Mm-hmm. Now, where it gets, to me, ridiculous, Daron Payne is not an 83. No way, no how, after the season that guy had, is he anything less than 85. And to me, he's like an 88, which would put him up there with Vita Vea, DJ Reader, DeForest Buckner, Kenny Clark, Grover Stewart, Javon Hargrave, all there. I think Hargrave deserves to be higher after what he did last year.
They got Chase as an 83.
Chase Young is an 83, and so is Daron Payne?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
What's Sweat? You're looking at the ends, apparently.
Sweat is too far down.
They got Young is better than Sweat?
Yeah. They have the top 10 edge rushers. Chase Young was number 10 with an 83. Let me see.
That's crazy. That's nuts.
Oh, no, that's edge rushers. What was I looking at?
I don't know. It's
crazy, though.
This is why, like, people get upset. Because you know who got upset about it? Deron Payne. He's like, not upset, but he was like, come on. What did I do? I had 11 and a half sacks last year. This is why I actually like Jeremy Fowler's top 10 lists the best, because he talks to actual coaches, players, and executives. And, like, the Madden folks have a hard job. They do a generally good job, but, like, people in the league know. Which is why I'm curious as we go through some of these tomorrow, like, does Cam Curl get some votes on the safety list? Because all he did was be the top-rated or one of the top-rated safeties on PFF last year. People in the league know. But we'll see. We'll go through that tomorrow. We'll go through some of that. We haven't gone through any of the offensive guys on Fowler. And if you're not remembering, what makes Fowler's list very cool is, again, he talks to the players, the coaches, the executives. It's about 80 people in the league, and they come up with the composite rankings. Yesterday we did the front seven. We don't have time now to do the back seven, but we're the back four. But tomorrow we can do corners and safeties, and then we'll hit some of the offensive positions later in the week and early into next week. But that's why, like, everyone does all these rankings, and I do think media rankings are interesting because we get so in our bubbles here where it's like we think our guy's the best. How is that guy actually better? And then unanimously amongst the league, he is. But I do think that, like, if you're Madden and you think Deron Payne is that much worse than John Allen, you have a misunderstanding of who Deron Payne is as a football player. And considering you're the only football game in town, that seems like you might want to do better in that regard. That's all I'm saying. All right, it's the Hoffman Show. Of course, we'll also get the game because we're addicted and we don't have any other option. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. When we get back, real things, real people said into real microphones. We are streaming live on YouTube as well, youtube.com/@theteam980. Tomorrow on the show, Nikki Javala is going to join us at 5 o'clock. What else? Do we have anything else on the docket for tomorrow, Haney?
We got Never Read the Comments.
Never Read the Comments at 6. Looking forward to that. I think that's it. We'll continue our Best Players of the 21st Century series. Other than that, I think the show's pretty open. Obviously, we'll be counting down. I want to dive deeper into standings articles on the best and worst of the Snyder era on the field, so we can do that tomorrow. Thursday, obviously, we'll be live at Burgundy and Sold, Navy Yard, 4:30. Doors open. We'll start the show at 4, but you can come hang out with us starting at 4:30. Beyond that, Thursday night, the World Cup starts, the Women's World Cup. Australia, I think, hosts the first game as one of the host countries. Friday is the first U.S. game. I believe we're going to close the show out on Friday with one of our friends from the Washington Spirit helping us preview the World Cup. So that'll be pretty cool on Friday to close out the show. And send us into Friday night where the U.S. takes on Vietnam in their World Cup opener. So a lot of cool stuff coming this week. And then next week, obviously, all eyes on training camp. Training camp opens on Thursday morning at 8 o'clock. Also, most of the show Friday will be spent on whatever Josh Harris says at his press conference. That is likely happening on Friday. So they'll vote in Minneapolis on Thursday, and then everyone will fly back to D.C. and we'll see what happens on Friday. Anything else we got from a housekeeping standpoint, Anthony?
That you need to bring the whiteboard tomorrow.
Yeah. So when should I expect to hear from you to make sure that I bring this?
You will hear from me today at 7:45.
I don't know how effective that's going to be.
Okay, you'll hear from me tomorrow when I text you in the morning.
That's definitely better. I need to put it
at the front door.
I'm trying to think. So tomorrow morning I have a thing. I got a workout class, so I'm going to have to move it out of the way. I eventually have a haircut. We're recording Take Command tomorrow. We're recording with Sheehan in the afternoon. I haven't decided, but I'll probably record that at home before coming in. So it's really like 1:45, 2 o'clock. I should be done with Sheehan and done with Take Command and be getting ready to leave to come here. That's the sweet spot. Or honestly, if you text me right before 1 o'clock and be like, put the whiteboard by the door, then I can put it there before I leave for Sheehan. And the next time I walk out the door will be to go to work, and I'll bring the whiteboard with me.
All right.
That's the plan.
Sounds like a plan to me.
All right. Well, if we got a plan, then I guess it's time for us to close out the show.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
All right, real things. Joel Embiid, we talked about this a little bit with Zaire earlier in the show, but if you haven't heard, Joel Embiid on his future with the Philadelphia 76ers.
Very good brain, but what can we look forward from Joel Embiid?
I just want to win a championship. Whatever it takes. I don't know where that's going to be, whether it's in Philly or, anywhere else. I just want to have a chance to accomplish that. I want to see what it feels like to win that first one, and then you can think about, the next one. It's not easy. But it takes more than 1, 2, 3 guys. Gotta have good people around you, and like myself. Every single day I work hard to be at that level, so I can produce and make it happen. So every single day that's walking towards that.
Philly or anywhere else, huh? New York Knicks are licking their chops because that's how that goes. I still think he stays in Philly for the best years of his career, in part because Daryl Morey is not trading a prime Joel Embiid. There's no way. Like, what package could New York, even if Joel is like, I want out, like, are you willing to sit out? No, because we're paying you $50 million. Okay. New York, what's your best package? What could they possibly put together? 28 first-round picks? They're going to have to trade for everyone else's first-round picks somehow and then trade all of that? Like, no. And by the way, JoJo's already 29. I think that's what people don't understand. He's older. So there's that. We don't have time to play this whole deal from Dion Waiters. Should we just save this for tomorrow?
Yeah, I think it's worth tomorrow.
Okay. It's really, really good real-life stuff from one of my favorite guys that I ever covered on a human level, a guy that I actually got to know a little bit in a professional relationship because I was with him at Syracuse, Dion Waiters on the Dan Le Batard show. So we'll play that for you tomorrow during Real Things. But on the Embiid front, like, I get why he's frustrated. I would be so fed up if every single teammate that came and played with me quit on me or was traded away in Jimmy Butler's case, or they chose the wrong guy. Like, there's just been so much incompetence around Embiid, but they've still been good. And I still would probably trust Daryl Morey more than others to figure it out. But this is definitely a big year. Huge, huge year to see if they can get the right pieces around him in Philadelphia. And what Maxey becomes is ultimately the big question. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. Try to do better, and I'll try to bring the whiteboard. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app.